A special look at Israel and the Middle East. Thanks for joining us for Faith Nation. From Washington, I'm Caitlin Burke. In 2020, Israel's borders closed and the tourism industry shut down. Since COVID restrictions were lifted last March, the number of tourists has steadily increased. Now, people from around the world are flocking back to Israel. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl spoke with visitors about what it's like to set foot in the Holy Land.
Tour buses once again line the streets of Jerusalem, while boats full of tourists are back on the Sea of Galilee.
Not like the year of 2019, but it is so blessed. Hallelujah. We have groups and we have no complaints.
CBN News joined worship boat captain Daniel Carmel and a group of more than 40 Brazilians, many making return trips to Israel. Sarah Limas Silverio first visited in 2008 as a 15-year-old.
It feels amazing, and I was waiting for this moment. We had our trip changed like 3 or 4 times because of the pandemic. But now that we're here, we're enjoying every single moment, the presence of God. It's so beautiful, and the joy of the Holy Spirit on us. It's amazing.
For 2 years, Israel's borders were virtually closed to tourists, with some exceptions. But since restrictions were lifted in March, it's as if the floodgates have opened and visitors are returning from all over the world.
It's the first time. We came in our group, prayer group. I think it's great. I think it's beautiful, amazing to walk in the land of Jesus Christ. We are Catholic. Of course, for us, is a gift from the Lord.
This is my first trip. I've been dreaming of visiting Israel for the past 30 years, 35 years or more than that. Both myself and my husband, we both wanted to visit, but unfortunately he passed away, so my son brought me here.
I would like to see the place where Jesus was born. This is the first reason for me. But now I understand that there are also other parts of Israel that are interesting for the Bible.
Originally from India, the Beakey family now lives in Detroit.
I was here in 2014. It's a historic place and holy place, and I would like to visit as many times as possible. It gives so much joy, right, to be here and to walk through the Bible. We read the Bible, but to see with your own eyes, it's a different experience.
I just thought it was really surprising how when we were crossing from Jordan to Israel, I know this is the promised land, but you can quite literally see how the barren land just turns into full, there's so many plants and there's so much life, all of a sudden, just right over the border. And it's just crazy to, see that.
Adam Arbel of the Ministry of Tourism says visitors from the United States in July and August surpassed 2019 numbers for those months.
Incoming tourism to Israel has steadily increased since we fully reopened our gates a few months ago. Most of the tourists from the United States are evangelicals.
That includes Passages, an organization that brings Christian university students to the Holy Land.
It's such an incredible experience, an opportunity to be able to come to the Holy Land as a Christian and as a college student, and it's never something that I ever thought that I would have the opportunity to do. And it really has just been a life-changing experience, and being able to actually see the places that I've been reading about my entire life.
I am overwhelmed of the beauty of this land, but also just the cultural and religious history and how it's all kind of interwoven together. I've been fascinated to learn so much already. One of the surprising things that I guess a lot of people don't know is more of the geopolitical conflict here, what is going on politically, and it's all kind of centered here in Jerusalem.
Given Israel's popularity with international tourists, Arbel says they took action rather than just wait for the pandemic to end.
During the COVID, we took the opportunity to upgrade our tourism sites, to improve the tourism infrastructure, and to build new hotels.
Another downturn resulted from the war, since high numbers of Russians and Ukrainians usually visit Israel. Fortunately, others are expected to take their place.
Thanks to the Abraham Accords agreements, we have new direct flights to new destinations. We see many new tourists who will come to Israel from new countries, from new destinations, and it's wonderful.
By the end of 2022, Israel expects the year's total number of visitors to reach around 2.5 million. As tourism continues to climb steadily each month, leaders are happy that the Holy Land is back on the priority list. Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Sea of Galilee and Jerusalem.
When we come back, the stage is set for a $500 billion megacity in the middle of the desert with a connection to the Bible. Stay with us. In the middle of the desert, that's where the Saudi kingdom is planning a $500 billion megacity. The 160-mile-long, ultra-modern settlement is the brainchild of Saudi Arabia's crown prince. It's one of the most ambitious construction projects in history, but also poses a threat to some ancient biblical sites. Chuck Holton brings us a first-hand look from the deserts of Saudi Arabia.
For now, the northwest corner of Saudi Arabia is home to more camels than people. That would certainly change if Crown Prince Salman's ambitious plans come to fruition. The heir to the Saudi throne recently announced this region as the site of his new $500 billion megacity called Neom.
Imagine a traditional city and consolidating its footprint, designing to protect and enhance nature.
The goal is for up to 9 million people to live here in what's touted as the world's most modern, forward-thinking, and climate-friendly city. Few people, however, know about the deep biblical history of this area. Those who do wonder if the megaproject would help or harm the region's historic value. Andrew Jones has studied biblical archaeology for more than a decade. CBN followed him on a week-long adventure to some fascinating biblical sites, places almost everyone has read about, but few will ever get to see. Jones believes Mount Sinai is actually located here, very close to the proposed site of the new Saudi megacity.
So the biggest issue is that Moses, when he was taking care of Jethro's flocks, now that was his father-in-law, and when he had fled Egypt, he lived in the land of Midian. And the land of Midian is in northwest Saudi Arabia. There is no archaeological evidence for Midian in the Sinai Peninsula. And it was on one of those days when he was out with the flocks that it says he went to the mountain of God in the book of Exodus. And it says he saw a burning bush on Mount Sinai. So then you'll realize that Mount Sinai is close to the home where Jethro lived in the land of Midian.
His theory is that after crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites would have wandered in this very desert. As the team retraced their steps, it was easy to see why water was foremost in their minds. After the Israelites crossed the Red Sea in the end of Exodus chapter 15, it says that they came to the oasis called Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees. Well, those 12 springs are still here. Here's one of them behind me that's been cemented in over the years, but it's still used by the Bedouins in this area to this day. But will the new Saudi mega project threaten this history?
There's a city they call the Line, which would go from the coast all the way up into the mountains of Midian. And they just announced this next city, which is up in the mountains of Jebel al-Lawz. This whole mountain range we believe to be the mountain of God. And so you will find, as you drive around the desert, these brand new roads that they're putting in, and this whole camp set up for the workers. So it's a multi-year project. We're just hoping that they don't not just ruin the view, but destroy anything of biblical significance out there.
After more off-roading, we came upon this site, a huge mountain with a peak that appears burned.
The evidence is all around us that this is the true Mount Sinai. Now, I know there are many proposed locations for the mountain of God, but this mountain here in the land of Midian is the only one that matches all the biblical evidence for Mount Sinai, or the mountain of God, or another name is Mount Horeb.
This large plain at the base of the mountain would have easily accommodated the Israelites and all their animals, and Jones tells us more.
Ron White discovered these pieces of marble when he first came here in the mid-1980s. In 1985, he found on one of the sections, written in ancient Hebrew, the name Solomon, the mountain of God, Moses. And so he believed, because of these key words, that King Solomon actually set up a marble shrine dedicated to the mountain of God at the base of Mount Sinai.
And look at this, a large altar centrally placed and covered with petroglyphs. Many of the images depict cows, an animal that in ancient times did not exist out here, but did exist in Egypt. If this is the real Mount Sinai, there was no way I was leaving here without climbing it. The Saudi government has big plans for this whole area, hoping to make it an oasis of modern comfort. But I like it just the way it is, and seeing it with my own eyes made the Exodus story come alive. Wow, I made it. This is the top of Jebel Musa, the mountain of Moses, where God came down and met with Moses to give him the 10 Commandments. What a hike. What a sight. It took about 2.5 hours to get up here, and it was almost 3 miles from where we parked the car, but it was worth every step. And you know, I don't think we'll ever be able to say definitively whether or not this is the actual spot where Moses met with God, but I guess that's just where faith comes in. From northern Saudi Arabia, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
A partnership between Israel and Iran. How Elon Musk could help make it happen when Faith Nation returns.
Rosa were devastated to learn that their son Christopher was born with club feet. The doctor urged the family to schedule surgery. Elmer knew they could never afford it. Rosa remembered hearing about Operation Blessing at the hospital. They called and asked if we could help.
They opened the doors for us so that we could have hope that our child would walk normally.
Operation Blessing arranged for Christopher to receive the surgery and casting needed to correct the misalignment in his feet and ankles.
I am thankful for the people who did this surgery for my son.
CBN partners are changing lives. Your help brings food, water, and joy to families. Children learn, play, laugh, and smile again because you care. Partner with CBN. Please call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com.
2 years ago, the threat posed by Iran led to a historic partnership between Israel and 3 Arab countries, which resulted in the Abraham Accords. Although the agreement created new regional opportunities, the Iranian threat has grown. While the Islamic regime vows to destroy Israel, it was interestingly a Persian king who liberated the Jewish people centuries ago. Now, experts believe building on that ancient relationship could be the true secret to peace in the Middle East.
We just cannot permit the betrayal of our society and our country.
It's hard for Americans in 2022 to imagine what Iran was like when I was born in Tehran myself.
More than 40 years ago, Iran and Israel shared a mutually cooperative relationship, the two countries working together in areas like economic development, agriculture, and healthcare. CBN News national security contributor Eli Kohanim experienced that partnership firsthand.
My own father had conducted business with an Israeli company where he had brought in Israeli water engineers who were already at the time the most advanced in the world.
That relationship turned hostile during the 1979 Islamic Revolution when Ayatollah Khomeini took power.
Long live Khomeini!
4 decades later, the Abraham Accords proves partnership between Israel and its Arab neighbors is possible and even profitable. Now, some former State Department officials believe the natural next step could involve the Iranians themselves.
The people see the benefits of deals like the Abraham Accords that their neighbors are reaping. So they see the new jobs, the healthcare benefits, the economic benefits, and they're asking themselves, well, why shouldn't we get some of those benefits of cooperating with Israel?
There are protests going on right now. And that's why speaking out in support of them is so important, and why offering them, an opportunity, to say you don't have to be a pariah, you don't have to be isolated, and, a deal like this could come to be.
As far-fetched as a partnership between Iran and Israel sounds, former U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Victoria Coates and former advisor to the U.S. Representative for Iran, Len Khodorkovsky, say it's not just possible, it's the inevitable path to peace in the Middle East.
75 years ago, if I told you Germany, Japan, and Israel would be 3 of our greatest friends and democracies and capitalist partners and huge economies, you would have told me I was crazy. It's simply impossible to imagine. Yet here we are.
The two proponents have dubbed this potential peace deal the Cyrus Accords.
Cyrus the Great, who was a Persian king that liberated the Jewish people from Babylon and allowed them to go back to their traditional homeland and build their temple. He even financed the rebuilding of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem.
That act of inclusion and tolerance, has always been held up as an example of what is possible in cooperation between people of different faiths but similar morals and values.
To get here, Coates and Khodorkovsky admit the current Islamic regime will likely have to go. And it may surprise you who they think could help make that happen.
Well, curiously, the answer may lie with none other than Elon Musk.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Elon's been in the news a lot recently, but one of the things that he has done is deploy a satellite-based internet service, which is called Starlink.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
Operated by Musk's company SpaceX, Starlink consists of a network of more than 2,000 private satellites. It's touted as being able to offer high-speed internet anywhere on Earth.
Bringing in uninterruptible and uncorruptible internet access that would not make its users targets, but rather allow them to communicate with each other, because that's the way the regime has stayed in power, is they literally will cut off the internet for days at a time and prevent people from communicating. And if they can communicate, they can coordinate.
In February, Musk was able to provide internet access to Ukraine, even as Russia attempted to jam all signals. A move Ukrainian military leaders say has kept critical lines of communication open.
The people of Iran want to live in a free and democratic country. And what the United States and Western powers need to do is to support the Iranian people in their quest for freedom.
We shouldn't wait until the day after the regime is gone. We should think about that day right now and prepare for that day. Build those people-to-people ties, build business ties, create cultural connections. Work on practical projects that could potentially be, turned on the day after the regime is gone.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington. Coates and Khodorkovsky agree it's ultimately up to the Iranian people to take back their country. Amid reports of all the unrest there, they believe that day could be coming. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And when we come back, a look at a book that reveals some of the oldest photographs of Jerusalem ever taken. An author and a photographer tell the history of the holiest city on earth in a new book. It contains some of the oldest photographs of Jerusalem ever taken. Their book also explains what Jerusalem Rising means in terms of biblical prophecy. Chris Mitchell has the details from Israel.
Author Doug Hershey uses past and current photographs to show the extraordinary transformation of Jerusalem over the past 175 years. The book continues Hershey's unique look at prophecy and the Holy Land.
Much like Israel Rising documented the revival of the land, Jerusalem Rising is documenting the fulfillment of, or at least the beginning processes of these biblical prophecies about Jerusalem being restored and what it's leading to.
Hershey and adventure photographer Eden Ram comb the city for just the right angles to capture its past and present.
Eden climbed up the top, there he goes. Looking at, you can kind of look through the fence here. It'll look better when you see the actual photos, but some of all of that stuff right in there is what he's getting a shot of from back in the early 1900s.
To be able to go to some of these locations and find the exact locations where a photographer set up 175 years ago to capture what Jerusalem looks like, and then go back today to the exact same location. Some of the oldest photos of Jerusalem ever taken were from 1844, and we have several of those in Jerusalem Rising, and all of those I don't think have ever been recreated ever.
One of those before and after photos takes place here, just outside the Jaffa Gate of Jerusalem's old city walls. It looks back from this spot towards what's known as the Tower of David. Hershey says most any city on earth may look different over the course of 100 years, but Jerusalem is unique.
There's no other city on earth that's had its history foretold, from its destruction to its desolation to a revival as a world player. So to be able to see all of that beginning to unfold in our day is really amazing. And so that's a lot of what's been documented in Jerusalem Rising.
Hershey says some of those prophecies can be seen on the streets here.
In Zechariah 8, God says that he's going to return to the city and he's going to dwell with his people, which is a profound statement for one of the prophets to say, that God's saying, I'm going to return to Jerusalem and dwell with my people. He says that the old men and old women will dwell safely in the streets, leaning on their canes, and the children will be playing in the streets, and the nations will begin to flood to Jerusalem.
And before COVID, Israel set records for tourism.
Never before in history have the nations flooded to Jerusalem the way that they are in our day. And now, clearly, in Zechariah 8, it's in the context of coming to worship the King in Jerusalem, but it's undeniable that these are very beginning stages, historically, that we're seeing unfold in the city that have just never happened before.
Hershey says if we want to understand Jerusalem, we must look to the Scriptures.
Ultimately, if we continue reading the Scriptures, if we believe what the prophet said, Jerusalem is going to be a seat of ruling power for a Jewish king. Ezekiel 5:5 says that God has placed Jerusalem in the center of the earth. So locationally, it's already in the center of the earth. And one day soon, and even beginning now, it's already becoming the center of the world's attention.
A city that for thousands of years has stood at the crossroads of history and prophecy.
Jerusalem has been conquered and reconquered multiple times. It's changed hands over 40 times. It's been completely leveled at least twice. There's been literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years where the city has just laid desolate, according to eyewitness accounts. Now we're at a time where things are starting to revive. So prophetic words from Zechariah 8 or Isaiah or any of these prophets about Israel, about Jerusalem, where once we thought were allegorical or spiritual or just abstract concepts, we're finding that God is doing exactly what he said. Never before have these prophecies been fulfilled in such a dramatic and significant way, and it's happening in our day in a really powerful and unique way.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Jaffa Gate, Jerusalem's Old City.
That's going to do it for Faith Nation. Thanks for joining us and have a great night.